we're reading through book of Leviticus, and it's not an easy read as we go through all these passages. A lot of people disconnect from what's in the Torah passages. I've picked something this year to do is to do all my drash moments from the prophets, and sometimes I'm surprised at what Hashem says to me. Sometimes I'm surprised directions that I go. You realize I pray all week long of what to say, because I actually do not know who's going to be there, who's not going to be there. And I know that sometimes Hashem has a word for you. And that word may not be for me, and it comes to me, and I say, this is strange, this is weird, but that's what I'm supposed to say. So sometimes I'm surprised by the kinds of things I say myself, is what I'm trying to say. That's okay. It's just part of the job. So Acharei Mot, our Haftarah is from Amos, as we have read. I want to start with I guess not a question, but something to bring to your remembrance. I'm going to guess, I'm pretty sure, I'm not going to ask you this question because I'm pretty sure you guys are familiar with Ian Fleming's iconic secret agent. Right? All I have to say is one word. I guess 3 words. Bond. James Bond, right? That has to be said that way, right? So, maybe you read the books, maybe you watched the movies, but his drink of choice is vodka martini, always, in all the scenes. And he orders it the same way every time. Shaken, not stirred, right? I have to do a little Sean Connery there. I was never really sure what that meant until I asked someone who knows a lot more about these things than I do. And they explained to me that stirring the drink, the flavors, they kind of sort of stay separate. They mingle, but they do stay separate because the density of the liquid is different and they're just unique. Now, shaking it and shaking it thoroughly, and particularly shaking it with ice, blends the flavors completely, making the drink ice cold. So it's the same drink, but served in 2 different ways. Very different experience. That's how James Bond liked it. Shaken, not stirred. So there you go. Now, why am I talking about this? Because in our Parsha, as we read from the prophets this week, we read about Hashem stirring and shaking things up. That is the word of the prophet. Amos was a farmer, if you haven't guessed from his language. He was a farmer who happened to be a prophet. God gave him words to say, so a lot of the things that Amos says are very farm-like language. And his words were directed to the northern kingdom. To the northern kingdom of Israel, and he criticized injustice in the kingdom quite a bit. And the section that we read in Amos 9, we read about judgment. You should not be surprised, he's a prophet. But the judgment compares Israel to surrounding nations, which should be surprising to us, because we always think of Israel being unique. And in the middle of that judgment, it is accomplished with firm promise of covenant love. Now that's unusual. You see, in Amos chapter 9, verse 8, we read that Hashem's eyes are fixed on a sinful nation. Well, you can guess what that sinful nation is, and the hint is it's not just Egypt and all the others. Israel is in that category as well. God is not blind. He sees the injustice. He sees the wrongs that we humans do, and he recognizes when a nation is sinful. And so the prophet says, Hishmati otza mi'al pinecha adama, I will destroy it, that nation, from the face of the earth. It does not get more ominous than God promising to obliterate you, because that's what the prophet says. I don't know how else to explain that, except God is going to destroy them completely. But then the prophet continues, and he says something a little different. He says, Efes ki hashmed ashmed et Beit Yaakov, but, or only, the house of Jacob I will not destroy completely. And this is an amazing promise. God says that Israel will be punished, but not utterly destroyed. Why? Because it's not like the other nations. And the only reason is very simple. Hashem promised it so. And it's true. If you know a little bit about Israel's history, Israel has suffered enormously throughout the entire history of our people. Just read any version of Israel's history and you pretty much will see it. Yet every nation that has sought to destroy Israel does not have much power anymore. In fact, most of them are gone, but Israel remains. So, do you see this picture coming into focus? In the next verses, God says, I'm giving a command, and I will shake Israel together with the other nations, shake them like in a sieve. And this stirring and this shaking will not be comfortable. And the prophet says, Becherev yamutu kol chatayeh. Sinners will fall, or literally die, by the sword. People are going to die in this shaking. God's justice upon Israel and on those who defy and spurn him and his Torah, it will not be subverted. God is promising some pretty harsh punishments. Yet the smaller parts in the sieve, what does not belong, they will all shake out. But not even one grain, one little tidbit that God intends to keep will actually fall to the ground. The prophets have an interesting way of speaking in everyday images, and hopefully they sink in and they make sense. Not every time, but this particular picture seems to be very vivid. So it's time for us to consider what guidance can these ancient words offer us today, living in a world that may be very, very different from that world. And I have 2 points for you. And I don't know who needs to hear this, but I just know that somebody out there does. First one is this. Don't be stirred so much that you forget who you are. Don't be stirred so much that you forget who you are. See, Israel's problem has always been the same. Throughout all the centuries, very simple, a desire to be like everyone else. And in thousands of ways, we're not really that much different from the rest of the world's population. We strive for similar things. We all want to be happy, safe. We share the same kind of interests, hobbies, and ask the same questions about life. But what sets Israel apart is Hashem, his covenant, and our commitment to observe it no matter what. We want to mix and blend with others, but our core identity is Torah. And it always comes in conflict when we try to blend it with things that it's not compatible with. So Hashem puts us into a sieve, and he shakes us apart, and the parts that should not be together are thrown off. Now, if you have experienced some stirring, some rattling, some shaking in your life, it could be that God is just trying to get your attention. I don't know, but that could be very much the case. And at moments like that, do not despair. And always remember who you are, where you belong. Remember who you're supposed to be. If you're stirred, don't forget who you are. My second point, let it shake, but you stand firm. Have ever any one of you tried to jump off of a merry-go-round while it was still kind of moving? Or maybe a treadmill that did not quite finish its cycle? It often does not end well. You best wait for it to stop, and then you take your step. Then you move. If you feel shaking, and I don't know, maybe some of you are experiencing things in your life right now that there's no other way to describe it as some sort of a change or some shakeup. If you feel the shaking all around you, it can be very scary, it can be very uncomfortable, it can even be very painful. Changes are hard. Shaking could be an indicator that God is actually working in your life. He's actually doing something. Trust me. I will tell you this, that it is best to be thoroughly shaken than simply a stir. You see, a stir means that things are moving. There's some energy, but it doesn't mean things will actually change. And what we need most is for Hashem to help us to change. We need for Hashem to help us to grow to new heights, to expand our capacity for faith, for trust, for love, for mercy, for forgiveness. Fill in the blank. We're supposed to become more and more like Him, to walk the paths of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, because you know they have been shaken thoroughly throughout their entire lives. Typically, we don't like instability. We don't appreciate the shaking, but don't fear the shaking. You see, Yeshua taught us that Hashem knows every hair on our heads. He said that. And it is true. When you're a part of God's covenant people, even if you're a tiny little grain, if you're a little tiny pebble in God's sieve, you will not fall to the ground. The kingdom belongs even to the least of these, God's children. That's what Yeshua said. Again, that's what our rabbi taught. You have to remain in the covenant. There is a part of that. There is something for you to do. And that means you're supposed to stay put, engage with your emunah, with your faith every day, not merely leaning on your heredity or whatever you think that is owed to you in life. Faith perseveres through stirring, through the shaking. So let's have confidence in the one who is doing the shaking, that no matter what, no grain, no pebble that is not meant to fall to the ground will fall to the ground. So let it shake as you stand firm. Shabbat shalom.